For this next season, we also just heard the Halliburton news. I mean, none of us are surprised to see what it was, but geez man, I don't want to derail this too much since that's a different topic entirely. But yeah, the Celtics, I mean, the financial flexibility they have given themselves long-term by getting out of the Jrue Holiday contract is remarkable. We all expected this was coming, but it happened pretty damn quickly, and I'm genuinely surprised that they managed to get a player as talented as Anfernee Simons in this move without giving up any of their own picks at all. The Blazers must have really liked Jrue Holiday's fit for their team culture and defensive identity. We'll dive deeper into that in just a moment, but you know, with Simons, I don't want to disrespect the guy at all. He's clearly talented. But immediately, what I thought when I saw this trade was, should I get used to rooting for Anfernee Simons as a Celtic, or is he going to be on a different team in 2 seasons? He's on an expiring deal, which makes his future with Boston pretty uncertain. Offensively, Simons brings some real skills to the table. He's a shooter, and not just any shooter, he's a legitimate pull-up shooter who can create his own shot off the dribble. That's valuable in today's NBA. He can also make plays for his teammates when needed, showing decent court vision and passing ability. But here's the thing, you don't want him running your entire offense, right? With the Celtics, between Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, and the rest of the roster, he doesn't need to be the guy orchestrating everything. It can be more of a ball handler by committee situation, which I suppose is about the best you can ask for given that Tatum's going to be gone for a while with his injury. Simons will definitely make shots, that's what he does. We'll see how much they incorporate him into their off-ball sets and movement patterns. It's interesting to think about Simons fitting into a different offensive role than what he had in Portland, where he was more of a primary option. In Boston's system, he could thrive as a complementary piece who gets good looks within the flow of their offense. Now, let's talk about the defense, and don't you worry, this is where things get really interesting and not necessarily in a good way for Boston. Look, without Tatum, there's still going to be a ceiling on how good this team can be next season. We all understand that reality. But for the defense specifically, I honestly don't know if you could imagine a larger defensive drop-off at one position than going from Jrue Holiday to Anfernee Simons. I mean, you are losing so much on-ball defense, it's almost staggering. Jrue Holiday is one of the premier perimeter defenders in the league. He can guard multiple positions, he's physical, he's smart, he anticipates plays before they happen. You're throwing a massive amount of defensive versatility out the window with this move. Holiday could guard point guards, shooting guards, even some small forwards effectively. Simons, while not terrible defensively, is nowhere near that level of impact on that end of the floor. I think the Celtics front office is aware of this significant defensive downgrade. I think they just accepted the reality that they had to get off of that long-term money, and they're taking on a guy in Simons who maybe they could flip at the trade deadline for somebody else who might be a better fit. There is legitimate value in getting a good player while also getting off of long-term money. That's basic salary cap management in today's NBA. The Celtics were facing some real financial constraints with Holiday's contract, especially considering the luxury tax implications and their other commitments. By making this move, they've opened up possibilities for future roster construction that simply weren't there before. But again, we can't ignore that this represents a big defensive drop-off. The question becomes, can they find ways to compensate for that loss through scheme adjustments, improved team defense, or potentially adding another defensive-minded player through other means? Maybe they're betting on their overall system being strong enough to absorb this individual downgrade. The timing of this trade also suggests they're thinking beyond just this upcoming season. With Tatum's injury situation and the uncertainty around when he'll be fully healthy, maybe this is about positioning themselves for the following season when they hope to have their full complement of talent available. It's a calculated risk that prioritizes long-term flexibility over short-term defensive excellence. Whether the calculation pays off remains to be seen, but you have to respect the front office for making a difficult decision. Now, thinking about Jrue Holiday with the Blazers, this is where things get really fascinating from Portland's perspective. They now have Jrue's contract, and they also still have the Jeremy Grant contract that goes out for several more years. That's a significant financial commitment to veteran players for a team that's still in a rebuilding phase. They have Scoot Henderson, who they are desperately hoping can develop into their starting point guard of the future. Scoot was definitely better in his second season, no doubt about it. There were clear signs of improvement in his decision-making, his shooting, and his overall feel for the game. Jrue Holiday is nowhere near as shoot-first as Simons was, which could actually be beneficial for Scoot's development. Holiday is more of a facilitator, someone who can help guide a young point guard and show him how to play winning basketball. There's some really interesting defensive stuff to think about here with Jrue Holiday joining players like DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara, Deni Avdija, and Donovan Clingan. The Blazers can actually put multiple really good defenders on the floor at the same time now. That defensive foundation could be crucial for their young players' development, giving them a safety net while they learn to play at the NBA level. With that being said, Portland is taking on a good amount of long-term money here for a much older player. Holiday will be in his mid-30s by the time his contract expires, and that's always a risk when you're committing significant salary cap space. They're also giving up a couple of their own second-round picks in addition to taking on the salary, which is still surprising the hell out of me. I'm trying to understand the logic here. Did you really want to do all that just to have Jrue Holiday either be a veteran presence, which he can certainly be a good one, no doubt about it? Or are you thinking you can flip him for something else that you feel would be better than if you had just tried to trade Simons to somewhere that wasn't the Celtics? Don't get me wrong, Simons is not some multi-time all-star where you can get a huge haul in return, but he's still a productive NBA player who could have brought back decent value. I'm kind of struggling with this decision from Portland's perspective. It feels like they might be overthinking their rebuilding process instead of just accumulating young talent and picks like most rebuilding teams do. Can Shaedon Sharpe finally take that next jump? His scoring within the three-point line was actually pretty good this past season, showing improved finishing ability and better shot selection around the rim. But dude's got to start making threes consistently if he wants to reach his ceiling as a player. The three-point shot is so crucial in today's game, especially for a wing player like Sharpe who has the physical tools to be special. Scoot Henderson is still very much in the process of hopefully becoming the awesome player that Portland drafted him to be. Development isn't always linear, especially for point guards who have to process so much information and make split-second decisions. The addition of Holiday could actually help Scoot's development by taking some pressure off him and showing him how to play the right way. You still have DeAndre Ayton here for at least one more season, and that's its own interesting subplot. Ayton has shown flashes of being a dominant center, but consistency has been his biggest challenge throughout his career. Can Portland's coaching staff unlock whatever has been holding him back? His partnership with the young guards could be crucial for both his development and theirs. The Blazers have got a lot of different pieces to figure out, along with players like Kris Murray, who's shown some interesting flashes, and Anfernee Simons getting that extension. And I get it, they had some real defensive culture issues that needed addressing this past season. Building a winning culture is about more than just talent. It's about having players who understand how to compete and what it takes to win games. But here's the thing that's really telling. Every reaction I saw on the internet from Blazers fans was not exactly cheering for that Simons extension when it happened. There seemed to be a disconnect between what the front office valued in Simons and what the fanbase saw from him on a nightly basis. Now you have Jrue Holiday, who again was not as productive on offense this past season as he had been in previous years. Holiday's contract runs until 2028, I believe, which means he'll be with the organization for several years during what should be their young players' prime development period. He could still be really good, he'll definitely be a solid veteran presence for them and all that. But I don't know, man. The financial commitment is significant and the timeline doesn't perfectly align with their rebuild. Jrue Holiday could certainly play an important role for Portland's development, providing leadership and defensive stability that the young guys desperately need. But they could also look to flip him in a few months, maybe even by the trade deadline, just like they did the first time he was traded. By the way, I really appreciate the irony there. Holiday has become something of a journeyman despite being such a quality player. The flexibility that comes with Holiday's contract could be valuable if Portland decides they want to pivot in a different direction. His salary could be useful in matching contracts for a bigger trade, or if a contending team desperately needs his services, Portland could potentially get some assets back while also clearing that money off their books. We'll see how this all plays out, but there are certainly multiple ways this could unfold for Portland. They could keep Holiday and try to build around him and their young core, or they could use him as a trade asset if the right opportunity presents itself. The key will be making sure whatever they do aligns with their long-term vision for the franchise. One more time, Jrue Holiday, it was genuinely a pleasure having you for those 2 seasons in Boston. He brought professionalism, championship experience, and elite-level defense to a team that needed exactly those qualities. His contributions to Boston's success during his tenure there shouldn't be understated, even if the relationship ultimately came to an end due to financial considerations. Holiday showed up every night ready to guard the opponent's best perimeter player, and he did it at an all-star level. His basketball IQ and ability to make winning plays in crucial moments were exactly what you want from a veteran presence on a championship-contending team. The fact that Boston had to move on from him speaks more to the realities of salary cap management than it does to any shortcomings in his play. Players like Holiday, veterans who understand their role, embrace it completely, and execute it at the highest level, are becoming increasingly rare in today's NBA. His professionalism and approach to the game set an example for younger players about what it means to be a true professional basketball player. I will once again say that if the Celtics could somehow pick up a good defender throughout whatever the hell they're planning on doing over the next month or so, that would be incredibly helpful for their championship aspirations. The loss of Holiday's defensive impact is going to be felt immediately, and they need to find ways to address that gap. Maybe Jordan Walsh could step in and be a real player for them this season. If you don't know who Jordan Walsh is, that's completely fine. He's a young wing who they're hoping can develop into a defensive specialist. The Celtics are betting on his athletic ability and defensive instincts to potentially fill some of the void left by Holiday's departure. Walsh has the physical tools to be an impact defender, good length, quick feet, and the kind of motor that coaches love to see from young players. But there's obviously a massive difference between having potential and actually contributing at the NBA level. The learning curve for young defenders can be steep, especially when you're asking them to help replace someone of Holiday's caliber. This trade represents more than just swapping two players. It's really about two franchises making very different calculations about their futures. Boston prioritized financial flexibility and betting on their system to overcome individual defensive limitations. Portland chose to invest in veteran leadership and defensive culture, even if it meant taking on long-term salary commitments. Both approaches have merit, but they also come with significant risks. Boston is gambling that they can find adequate defensive solutions without Holiday's elite perimeter defense. Portland is betting that Holiday's veteran presence and defensive impact will accelerate their young players' development enough to justify the financial investment. The timing of both franchises' competitive windows also plays into these decisions. Boston is trying to maximize their championship window with their current core, while Portland is still very much in development mode. These different timelines naturally lead to different priorities when evaluating trades and roster construction. One aspect that often gets overlooked in trade analysis is how well players will fit into their new team's culture and system. Simons joining Boston means adapting to a more structured offensive system where he won't necessarily be the primary shot creator. His willingness to buy into that role will be crucial for his success there. For Holiday in Portland, the adjustment might be even more significant. He's going from a championship-contending environment to a rebuilding situation where patience and teaching become more important than immediate results. His ability to mentor young players and maintain his own motivation in a different competitive environment will be tested. The coaches in both situations will play crucial roles in maximizing these players' contributions. Boston's coaching staff needs to find creative ways to use Simons' scoring ability while minimizing his defensive limitations. Portland's coaches need to leverage Holiday's experience and defensive expertise to accelerate their young players' development while keeping everyone engaged despite potentially limited wins. This trade also reveals interesting philosophical differences about how to build and maintain NBA rosters. Boston's approach suggests they value flexibility and the ability to make adjustments over maintaining expensive veteran talent. They're betting that their organizational strength and coaching can overcome individual talent deficits. Portland's approach indicates they believe veteran leadership and defensive culture are worth significant financial investment even during a rebuild. They're prioritizing the development environment for their young players over pure asset accumulation or salary cap flexibility. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong, but they do reflect different beliefs about what drives success in the NBA. Boston is betting on system and adaptability, while Portland is investing in culture and veteran guidance. The results of these different philosophies will play out over the next several seasons. Anyway, we're wrapping up here, but this trade is going to have implications that extend well beyond this upcoming season. Both teams have made significant commitments, Boston to financial flexibility and system-based basketball, Portland to veteran leadership and cultural development. The success or failure of this trade won't be fully apparent for at least a couple of seasons. We'll need to see how Simons adapts to Boston's system, whether their defense can compensate for losing Holiday's impact, and if they can use their improved financial flexibility to add other pieces. For Portland, the questions center around whether Holiday's presence actually accelerates their young players' development, if they can build a consistently competitive team around this veteran youth mix, and whether the financial commitment proves worthwhile given their timeline. Both franchises have made calculated risks based on their current situations and future aspirations. The NBA is ultimately about making the best decisions with imperfect information, and this trade represents exactly that kind of strategic gamble from both sides. Time will tell which organization made the better calculation, but both have legitimate reasons for optimism about their chosen path forward.